everybody, welcome back to the She Shed. Today's tutorial is going to be on this poncho, my version of a Mexican poncho with a roll neck, and the sides I have put our homemade buttons along the side, on both sides. This poncho is made as one. There is no sewing. You just continuously make in one go. Lie, there is sewing. Sew on the buttons, and that is it. The stitches we are using, the border is made from Herringbone Stitch, and the body is made with half double crochet. The width is 82 inches or 97 centimeters if you are including the border. If you prefer not to have a border, then you are looking at 32 inches or 81 centimeters. From the bottom to the neck or the shoulder, that is 30 inches or 76 centimeters, and that was made to fit me. You can adjust this pattern to fit yourself. You can make it larger, you can make it wider, you can make it slimmer, you can make it longer. That is purely up to you, but the measurements I gave you are the measurements that I made for this. The wool, the yarn that I used is Lincraft Cakes, and this is This is 80% acrylic, 20% wool. There is 350 meters in a ball, and I used exactly 4 balls of this. It says a 5mm hook, however I went up a hook size and I used my 6mm hook. You can see that I will not be using the same colour. I will be using this colour wave. So I will be using 4 balls of this colour wave to make this poncho in this tutorial. I used the same kind of wool but used a different colour wave in this poncho. I did not adjust my colours. I let the colorway go, and this is how it's turned out. Sometimes you can buy your colorways with exactly the same colors, and I actually did manage to do that for mine. Most of the time when I buy these, I can never get exactly the same balls. I always adjust. So if you're really fussy and you want to break it up, then you do so. Just at the end of each color, snip it off and continue on with the color that you want. But I'm not going to be that fussy about it. I'm just going to let it go. Okay, let's get this project started. To start off, I'm going to chain 94 stitches, so it'll be 92 plus 2. And I always start my chain a size up from the rest of what the garment's going to be. So I'm going to do the garment in a 6mm hook, so therefore I'm going to go up a size and do my chain in a 7. So it is chaining 92 plus 2, and I will meet you back at the end of. I have my 94 stitch chain. Now I'm going to swap my hook to my 6, which is the one I'm going to be using for the entire project, and we are going to do herringbone stitch for the next 5 rows. Herringbone stitch is very easy. So what we're going to do is miss the first 2 stitches and then go into the next stitch. Now we are not going to go into the V, we are going to turn our chain over and go into the lump on the back. So that loop on the back there. So not the V at the front, turn it over, and there's your lumps. Okay, so yarn over, and we're going to go into the lump on the back of the third stitch down. So we're missing the first two. 1, 2, go to the third one, and then you pull the yarn over, pull it through. You'll have 3 on your hook. Now this first one on your hook is going to go slipped through this second one on your hook, like so. Then yarn over through the first one on your hook, yarn over through the other 2 on your hook. Again, yarn over, going through the lump on the back, grab the yarn through, pull it through, and then you're going to slip that first loop there in under the second loop. And then yarn over through the first loop, yarn over through the 2 on the hook. Yarn over through the loop, yarn over through that loop, and then we're going under the second loop on the hook. Yarn over through the first loop, yarn over through the 2. Yarn over into the loop at the back of the stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then we want to pull that through that second loop on the hook, yarn over, pull through the first loop, yarn over, pull through the 2. And that creates the sloping effect for your herringbone stitch. So continue doing the rest of your chain, and I will meet you back here when you come to the end. At the end of the row, last couple of stitches. Now when you come to the last, when you come to the last stitch, just make that as a double crochet. So just your normal double crochet. Now the reason why is because then we'll make the edge nice and straight. You don't want the edge to go like whoop. So do your last stitch as a double crochet, then chain 2, turn, and continue with your herringbone stitch. And you'll need to do 5 rows of herringbone stitch. So if you continue that, and I will meet you back here when you've come to the end of your 5th row. At the end of your 5th row of herringbone, we are now going to do 66 rows of half double crochet. So at the beginning of every row, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and do a half double crochet in every stitch, which is yarn over into the stitch, grab your yarn through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Yarn over into the stitch, pull your yarn through, yarn over, pull through the 3. Yarn over into the stitch, pull your yarn through, yarn over, and go through the 3. Okay, and you are now going to repeat this for 66 rows if you are following along with this pattern. If you're making it shorter or longer, then do as many rows as you feel that will be the right length for you. And that's just the front or the back will be exactly the same. It doesn't make any difference. So just do as many rows, but if you are following along with me, we are going to do 66 rows. And I will meet you back here at the end of the 66 rows and show you how to do the shoulders and the neck line. A tip for you when you're doing your 66 rows, mark off every 10 rows that you do with a stitch marker, and then it makes it really easy to count, because then all you need to do is go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And I also back it up with a stitch counter as well. Here we are, finished the 66 rows, and you can see how I have put a stitch marker along the side. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 and the 6. So now what we are doing is leaving a hole for the neck. You are following along with me. You should have 92 stitches along, and what you need to do is count 33 stitches along. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 33. Put a stitch marker, and then making sure you leave a gap of 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. And then you should have 33 stitches. So I'm not going to put it in the 26, I'm going to put it, hopefully that will be the 33rd stitch. So to double check, I've got 33 stitches left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Right. So, what you will be doing now is only working from where you left off to the stitch marker and back again, and doing 4 rows just for this shoulder. Turning your work. So where you left off on your 66th row, chain 1, turn your work so it's facing you, and you'll see the stitch marker there. And all you're doing is just repeating the same, doing your half double crochet in every stitch until you get to your stitch marker. Okay, so where your stitch marker is, yes, you put a stitch in there, that's your 33rd stitch. Okay, chain 1, turn, and continue that 3 more rows. So just working up to this point here. Okay, and then when you have finished your 4th row, you should be back at the edge. So you shouldn't finish your 4th row at the neck, you'll be back at the edge here. Alright, I am going to finish these rows off camera, and I will meet you back here at the end of your 4th row. Alright, after you have finished your 4 rows, you need to end off. So just cut your yarn and pull it through. Okay, so we need to go to the other shoulder, and we need to start from the neck in, so we're keeping the pattern the same. If you did it the other way around, it won't do the right pattern. Okay, start off right where your stitch marker is, and then start doing your half double crochets. and you need to do 4 rows of half double crochet, the same as what you did for the other shoulder. For this side too, this time you are going to finish your 4th row at the neck. Okay, so I am going to continue these off camera and I will meet you back here at your 4th row. At the end of those 4 rows, you need to cut off your yarn and pull that through, and let's go back to the original side and let's start the yarn back up again, rejoin it, chain 1, turn, and now we are going to work a row, but we've got a gap we need to fill in. So we are going to work along to the edge of the shoulder and where the neck is. And now, because we had 26 stitches in the middle here for the neck, we need to chain 26 so we can mirror the other side and have 26 here. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Checking you've got your 26 stitches, and then just keep going along. This one can be a little tricky trying to get it through. There we go. And then alright, so at the end of the row you're going to chain 1, turn, work your 33 stitches to the chain, now this row is the actual first row of your 66 on the other side. So we've come to the end of our 33 stitches, and now we are going to work on the chain. So we want to do what we did at the beginning and work in the back loop, the bumpy bit, and you want to work your 26 stitches through the bumpy bit. So bear with me while I want to work in the back of the loop and continue on in the back of the loop of each stitch of the chain, and that should be 26 stitches. When you have done a stitch, worked all your chain, in the back of the loop. So there we go, you can see it's neat on that side. You just continue your half double crochets all the way along. Just continue going. And as I said, this is row 1 of the other side, so you need to now do 66 rows, the same as you did on the first side. You're repeating it for the other side. So I'm going to leave you to do your 66 rows. So this is row 1 that we're on now, the first row on that chain. So row 1, do another 65 rows, and I'm going to meet you back here after your 66th row. At the end of your 66 rows, your work is starting to look very large now, and we're going to finish off this side by doing 5 rows of the herringbone stitch, which means now that you've finished this last row, you are going to chain 2, turn over your work, and start your herringbone stitch. So we're going to yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, pull your yarn through, and bringing that part through the first loop on your hook, yarn over through the first loop, yarn over through the 2 remaining loops on your hook, yarn over through the stitch, pull your yarn through, yeah, and then remember to pull that through the first loop on your hook, yarn over through the first stitch, first loop, yarn over through the last 2 loops. Okay, so now you're back into the rhythm of doing your herringbone stitch. Do 5 rows of your herringbone stitch, and if it helps with your counting, you can use your stitch markers to mark each stitch, each row. Otherwise, count your 5 rows, and I am going to meet you back here at the end of the 5th row. Now you have finished your 5 rows of herringbone down the end, you have finished the front panel, and we are going to work on the side borders now. So the side borders will also be 5 rows of herringbone. The first row, you need to put a stitch in every single row that you're going to go past. So a stitch is going to go in every single row, so right up the top, and then the second row is going to be creating buttonholes, and I will show you that when we get to the second row. Then the 3rd, 4th and 5th row will just be herringbone all the way across. Okay, so let's get started on the side. So where you finished your 5 herringbone rows down the front, you're going to turn to the side, and you are going to chain 2, and then you want to put a herringbone stitch in every single row. Now do be careful when you're doing the herringbone stitch on the herringbone rows to make sure that you're going into the stitch and you're not going to create a big hole. Now sometimes you're not going to get around it, but see where it's got a bit of more of a hole on these rows here, not that row. So my advice is to actually go above the hole in the stitch there, and therefore you're not going to exacerbate that hole and make it larger. So putting a stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, So that's my herringbone rows, and then it gets really easy from now onwards because you're just putting a stitch in each row, and it's really easy to make sure you get both. Make sure you get, don't do it in one thread, make sure you get more than one thread as you go in. And so you can see raised bit going in, and then I'm going in the next one, which is a lower bit, and then raised, and then lower, and just eyeball it occasionally to make sure you are getting it in every single row and not doubling up on each row or missing a row. And make sure it looks even as well. And when you look at the other one, you can see what I mean. So you can see that I've gone along, and you can see that it's gone in every single row, and just keeping nice and neat, and that's what you're looking at. Alright, so I will leave you to finish off making your first row of stitches, and I will meet you back at the end of this row. This row is only going down one side, so you're going from one end all the way down to the other end. Okay, so you're just doing one side of your poncho. Okay, so I will meet you when you've got down to the other end of your poncho. When you have completed that row and you've created all your stitches, you should have around about 146 stitches. Now, it's not the end of the world if you have one or two less or one or two more, as long as all your stitches are even all the way along. For the next row, you'll be chaining 2 and turning. Now at this point you need to decide which is going to be your front and which is going to be your back, and that is purely up to you which way you would like to do that. If you're using a stripy yarn like me, do you prefer the color of the front, so this side, so that's going to be the front, opposed to this side, which will be the back, so on and so forth. You might have also maybe one side is slightly longer than the other for some reason, don't know why, but it could be. So you might want the shorter side to be your front. It is up to you which you pick is your front or your back, but whatever you pick is your front, that is where you're going to be placing your buttonholes. So for me, I'm going to make this side my front, so I'm at the back at the moment, and I'm going to make the other side my front. So what I need to do is count. First of all, I'm going to count 16 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And I'm going to place a stitch marker there, and that is where my first buttonhole is going to go. Then I count 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Place your next stitch marker for your next buttonhole. And for your next buttonhole, another 15 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so this is where your 3 buttonholes will be going. Now if you have smaller buttons that you would like to use and you'd like them closer together, then put them closer together. If you have bigger buttonholes and you'd like to spread them out further, if you've made this longer, basically if you're following along with me, this is the guide to get your buttons even out. If you're doing it your own way, then do the buttonholes so it's even down the side for you, but you only want them on the front side. You don't want them on the back side. So your buttonholes are going at the front. So go back to where you're starting your second row. Continue doing your herringbone stitch. And continue this until you get to the buttonhole or where the stitch marker is that is going to indicate where your first buttonhole is going to be, and I'm going to meet you back there. When you have reached your first stitch marker, skip that stitch and do a herringbone stitch in the next stitch. Repeat this until you get to the next stitch marker. And when you are at the next stitch marker, skip that stitch, go into the next stitch, continue your herringbone stitch till you get to the third stitch marker. And at your third stitch marker, skip that stitch and do the next stitch herringbone to the end of the row. Chain 2, turn, and now working your next row in herringbone, so this is row number 3, work up to that stitch marker, Okay, so when you get to your stitch here where you've made your buttonhole, so you can see that clearly there's a buttonhole there, there's a big hole, we are going to do a herringbone stitch in that stitch there, then one in the gap here, herringbone stitch in there, and then one on the other side, herringbone stitch there, and then continue till you get to your next stitch marker, so we're at the next stitch marker now, so we are going to put a stitch in here, then a stitch in this gap that we've created earlier, stitch on the other side, and continue on till the next stitch marker. So we've made it to the last stitch marker with that buttonhole there. Going to put a stitch in there, another one in the hole, and then the last one on the other side, and continue doing your herringbone stitch all the way to the end. So that is how you create your buttonholes. All right, and just work to the end of this row, which will be row number 3, and then you're going to come back for row number 4 and go back again for row number 5. So you're doing 5 rows. At the end of your 5th row, we're finished with that side now, so we just need to tie off. So cut your yarn off, slip through, pull through. And this is what it now should look like. Sorry, I can't get it all into the shot, but that's the front and that's the side that we've just done. And you can see that it's the right side because we have the buttonholes. 1, 2, 3, and the buttons will actually eventually be sewn on the inside to line up with the buttonholes. But before we get there, let's do the other side and let's repeat the process. So on your other side that you have not worked the border on yet, join your yarn on, chain 2. Then once again we are going to be working a herringbone stitch, 5 along here, and then 1 in every single row at the top of every single row. Okay, I'm going to continue this off camera and I'll meet you back here when you're down the end and finished setting up row 1 with a stitch, making sure you've put a stitch in every single row. So after you've finished making that first row, remember this is when we place our stitch markers. So we're going to count 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Put your stitch marker in place. Now remember, you're making sure that you've got it the same side as your other side with the buttonholes. So that's that side. Yes, I'm on the same side. Now the next one is 15 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Stitch marker there. And then another 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And remembering at the beginning of each row you chain 2, and then you are doing your herringbone stitch for the next 16 stitches. Okay, so you've got to your stitch marker. Remember that you're skipping over that stitch and then continue on to the next stitch marker. Skip over that stitch marker, continue on to the next stitch marker, skip that stitch and continue to the end. So I will meet you back at the end of row 2. At the start of the 3rd row, chain 2, turn and work your way down to that first Work your way down to that first stitch marker to the buttonhole. Now if you remember how to do this, go ahead and complete the row. If you don't remember how to do this, I will meet you back here when we've got to this first stitch marker. You have reached the stitch marker, so remember one stitch in the stitch before the hole, one stitch in the hole, and then one stitch on the other side of the hole. And then just continue down to the next stitch marker and repeat that for another 2 times until you get to the end. Now when you come to the end, you can see here that I've actually marked that I've done 2 rows. I like to mark that I've my 5 rows just to make sure I've got it correct. So when you come to the end, chain 2 and work your next row, which is row number 4, chain 2, work your last row, which is row number 5. I will meet you back here at the end of row number 5. When you have finished the 5th row, you have now finished that border on that side. So snip off the yarn, pull your yarn through, and let's start with the neck. Okay, so work out what is your back and your front. So your front will be where the buttonholes are. So I will turn this around so it is facing the back, because I want to start my neck from the back corner. Because if you do have a visible join going up the back here, so this is my back neck and this is where I'm going to join in here. If there is a join seen, you want it at the back, you don't want to see it at the front. It is going to roll over, but you still want to keep all your working at the back. Okay, so we are going to work the neck. Either you can do it as, here's the other one, you can do it as long as you like. I did this one for, what was it, 18 centimeters, which is, what is it, inches, 7 inches, 18 centimeters. Yeah, that's how long I did my neck. You can do your neck shorter or longer, it's up to you. And if you want to have a roll over, whatever's the most comfortable for you. So I did mine, as I said, 18 centimeters. So start, join your yarn to your work. So it's quite easy, you can see where the tail was when we were doing the shoulders. So I'm just going to join in there. And we are going to work our stitches, so chain 2, and we are going to work our stitches into every one of these stitches that were already there. And then along the shoulders we did 4 rows, so there should be 4 stitches along the shoulders, and it was 26 stitches along the neckline, 4 stitches along the shoulder. Now if you do more stitches, doesn't matter at all. Sometimes to have this quite neat in the corners here, you might need to do a couple of extra stitches, and that's okay. What I also do is I get my tails and I actually work over my tails so I can hide my tails, and it saves me sewing them in later. So once again we are going to do your herringbone stitch. Okay, so I'm going to continue making this first row, and then I'll show you how we step up and continue on in the round at the end of this first row. Because we are using herringbone stitch for the neckline to match our borders, we need to make sure we turn our work, and therefore we can't work in the round because we want the corresponding stitch to go the other way. So therefore, for each, at the end of each row, you are going to need to join your rows together, chain 2 to get to your next row, and then turn your work around and work the opposite way. So I'll show you for the first row, and a trick is to join your rows together, bring your yarn forward, put your hook through, not the chain, but the first stitch, grab your yarn and pull it through. And hopefully it doesn't get caught. There we go. And this will leave you with a much neater edge. Do your chain 2, then turn your work around and continue your herringbone stitch in the first stitch there. And continue on the round. And then when you get back to the end of your row, remember, when you come back to the end here to join, you're finishing in the last stitch. To join here, remember to bring your yarn, let's say that was your yarn, bring your yarn forward, put your hook from the back to the front, and then pull your yarn through, and that way you'll get a nice neat edge. I'm going to leave you to finish your neck, and when you have finished your neck, come back and let's sew on the buttons and finish our poncho. Finish the neck, tie off, sew in all your seams, and now we will be ready to put on the buttons. It's hard for me to show you this finished as now, so I'm going to insert a photo here. Time to put on your buttons. So I have got 6 of our handmade buttons, and these buttons we actually make from our eucalyptus tree in the backyard. So I've got all the ones that are reasonably the same size. I have my yarn needle, I have my yarn. I've got a lot of yarn, but I'm going to cut it up into the right size length to sew on my buttons. Obviously my scissors, and 3 stitch markers. So line up your front and your back perfectly. So here's the front, there's the back. Line the 2 up and find your buttonhole. So there's my buttonhole there, and I want to get one of my stitch markers, go to where the buttonhole is, and right in the middle of that place a stitch marker. So that's going to indicate to me where I'm sewing my first button. Move up to your second buttonhole, making sure that you're still lined up perfectly, and go through your buttonhole and place your next stitch marker. And going up again to my next buttonhole and placing my next stitch marker through that buttonhole. So now that that is done, I should be able to move the front out of the way, and I now have the placement of where my buttons are going to go. Now remember, your buttons are going to go on the inside of your poncho. This is also a good time to check that you've got the right side. This is completely reversible. As soon as you put your buttons on, it's not reversible. So do pick the best side and then have the best side on the outside. So thread your needle, get your first button and line your first button up where the stitch marker is. Obviously make sure you've got the holes the right way, so if you are doing it that way, you're going to sew that way. I'm going to go that way, so I need to sew that way. So going through the back, pull that through, go through my button. There's where my stitch marker is, so now I can move my stitch marker out of the way, pull that through, make sure I don't twist on myself, there we go, and then I knot this. There we go, and then continue to sew the button on as many times as you feel it is secure enough. Alright, I don't think I can get it through anymore. Okay, so I tie that off, and then cut off the ends, and there we go, first button. Hopefully that lined up. Yeah, I think that worked. There we go. So repeat this process for another 5 times. And here it is finished. But wait, there's more. I have made a matching beanie. It's a bit hard to see it there, I'll show you in another position. So here is the matching beanie. And I will do a tutorial on this beanie, and it is using the same pattern. So tutorial link will be down below once this tutorial is made. But wait, there's more. And lastly, last but not least, I have made a mitten. So I will do a tutorial on the second mitten. Now, because it is a striping yarn to match exactly with the poncho, it means that I don't know where the colour's going to come up, so I didn't have enough of this colour to do it as one colour, so the thumb is in the different colour, which means the other mitten is going to be in this colour, and I'll do the thumb in the next colour in the round. So should look fun. So we have the poncho, I can't fit it all in, we have the beanie, and we have one mitten, second mitten to come. There we go. Alright, so I hope you've enjoyed making watching this tutorial, and I hope you enjoy making your own poncho. If you do make this poncho, love to see a photo of it, so please feel free to message me your photo or to go on Instagram and give me your photo there. Instagram is lucky_platypus1. Otherwise, have a brilliant day, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time in the next tutorial. Bye, everyone.